Lambros, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited about this conversation. Let's first start for those who don't know you. Can you give us some overview of your current role and your background?
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Juan. I really appreciate the opportunity of connecting and looking forward to the conversation. So Lambros Lambrou, Chief Strategy Officer for Aon. I'm a lifer. So I've been with just turned over 39 years at Aon. One company, but many roles is probably the way I would describe my career. And I've also been fortunate to work in 3 of our 4 regions across the world. So started my career in London way back when, sort of 1986, in the Lloyd's environment. But in that time, I've also spent about 20 years in the Asia Pacific region. I spent just over 10 years in North America, and then the balance in the UK, EMEA region as well, and roles across commercial risk, reinsurance, and health, wealth, and talent. And so most recently, I was global head of commercial risk until a couple of years ago, and took over as the global head of human capital, which is the amalgam of our health, wealth, and talent capabilities. And then a few months ago, I moved from that role into the new role within the firm, being the chief strategy officer role for Aon PLC. So, a myriad of roles and a myriad of experiences across the firm over almost 4 decades.
Thank you. So I thought, given both, obviously, your background in Aon, where you've seen, as you said, several different continents, different types of businesses, but also given that Aon, one of the largest global brokers, I thought it would be great to start with your perspective on, what are the mega trends or the biggest themes of how the world is changing?
Oh, great. I mean, it's a great place to start. And I would say the reality of many numerous conversations we're having with clients across, pretty much every spectrum of either industry or region or type of buyer. The conversations that we're having with them seem to, they often start with a perspective on the macro issues that they're dealing with as organizations. And, we did some work a couple of years ago that helped to synthesize that across 4 key areas, being trade, technology, weather, and workforce. And so most of our conversations from a strategic perspective, go towards those sorts of areas with our clients, recognizing that, individually they are all really important to organizations, but also collectively the interdependence of trade, technology, workforce, and weather is substantial. And so, what we would say is, as you double click on each of those areas, you start to see opportunities for organizations to help our clients deal with what is, a very complicated, very interdependent, and also, I would say, extremes of volatility that, C-suite of clients are dealing with in real time, sometimes with some pattern recognition, oftentimes with no pattern recognition. And so that's what makes, what we do incredibly interesting, incredibly relevant, and incredibly important for the clients that we serve. And so, as you say, if you do the double click on some of these, just take trade. Trade, you've got geopolitical issues, you've got, globalization versus regionalization, you've got the impact on supply chains that come out of that. Technology, anything from, technological innovation and disruption of business models, the impact of digital transformation, the impact of AI, artificial intelligence, and, automated intelligence, where that conversation is going. On weather, obviously, you've got climate, you've got ESG, you've got, how we think about moving from today's world through, decarbonization and everything, associated with the move to sort of clean energy and everything associated with that. And then on workforce, it's anything from the future of work to, labor market evolutions and the, different shifts we're seeing in demographics that come with that. And the reality is that all of those things intertwine. All of those things intertwine. And so, that has led us to also think about candidly how we organize ourselves to be able to respond to those opportunities in the most holistic, seamless, most effective way. Because the reality is that is very rarely today. Risk is very rarely today in a silo. We have to think more about the problems that we're solving much, much more through an interdependent horizontal lens. I would say the more traditional approach, which has been very sort of vertical in nature. That's still relevant, but I think when we're talking to clients and thinking about some of the big strategic macro things that they're facing, this is oftentimes where the conversation goes. And many of the discovery sessions that we have with clients, where we sort of really get into I would say sort of deep and detailed conversations in and around what they are dealing with today, what they are thinking about tomorrow, and how our industry can be more relevant to them, helping them to navigate what is, an increasingly complex, real-time sort of, I would say, environment for their businesses, but where oftentimes I would say the mindset shift from protecting the downside to enabling the upside is actually what is starting to differentiate clients around success and or failure, or maybe just not as much success.
And that's a very interesting one, from protecting the downsides to enabling the upside. Like, so what would you say is Aon's role in so when you link all these macroeconomic kind of trends with the role of Aon, like what does it translate into? Is it new products? Is it advice? Like, what is it?
So AO, I would say it's definitely both. So it's protecting the downside and enabling the upside. That there is no doubt. I think there is, candidly, there is an element of how do we enhance the solutions that exist today. But there is also a lot in and around. So how do we think about the solutions of tomorrow, and how do we quickly get them to today? And a lot of that is based around, I would say, the increasing investment that we and our industry collectively is making in data analytics to come up with insights that we don't have today, come up with insights that where pattern recognition, where history is not a great determinant of the future, come up with insights that are predictive in nature, that help organizations understand how the decisions of today impact the outcomes in the future. And so I would say it's a combination of both. It is absolutely how do we improve on the relevance and sustainability of solutions that we have today, but also bringing new innovations, bringing creativity to problems today. That also includes how we bring more risk-bearing capital to the table to allow clients to have, I would say, greater optionality, but also the ability to be able to solve for bigger problems through access to, greater amounts of risk transfer capital that they desperately need.
And when you think about like all these kind of context with how do you increase the relevancy and the role of Aon in the future of your clients? Like, how do you think about the priorities within Aon? How do you structure, like, I mean, obviously Aon is a very large organization. How do you focus on, like, what are the 2 or 3 things that really matter?
Yeah, so I think, one of the things that we have done in the last couple of years is actually reorganize ourselves around the interdependent nature of risk. So, we took a decision a couple of years ago to say that, notwithstanding the traditional silos of products and solutions that exist across our industry, we felt that there was a significant opportunity to align our insurance and reinsurance capabilities, as well as our sort of human capital capabilities, under sort of a risk capital umbrella and a human capital umbrella. And then obviously more recently, we've aligned both of them under one leader in Andy Marcel, who is our global solution line leader for the firm. And, that was, at the time, perhaps a little innovative and a little first mover, I would say, in terms of how our industry operates. But, what we have found as a result of doing this is that we have found that we are engaging in conversations with clients where the notion of what are we actually trying to solve for is, much more front and center in the conversations that we're having with clients. And I would say the other thing that we have seen is as we have adopted a one data lake approach to coming up with new insights or improving on existing insights, making them more predictive, trying to understand the interdependence between data points that actually allows us to look into providing, I would say, insights against paradigms that have existed for a long time, but new insights against paradigms that's actually going to enable us to solve things that previously were unsolvable. And so that's really interesting. That's really exciting for us. As we generate the insights, our expectation is that as we understand how data points behave under different scenarios, and we can share that with risk-bearing capital, then our ability to be able to bring new capital as well as increase the relevance of existing capital to those issues that our clients face means that we continue to be on the path of improving the relevance of our industry to our clients and helping them solve a lot of the volatility issues that they're facing today.
And do you often refer to these 3x3
Yeah.
kind of strategic framework? Is it aligned to the areas you just described? Or?
That's right. So, the 3x3, which we launched in the latter half of 2023, the three elements of it were: one, from a competence and capability standpoint, we were aligning our capabilities under those two risk capital and human capital umbrellas. So, that was something that we put in place a couple of years ago, and we've really seen the benefits that have really come as a result of that, in terms of better conversations with clients and better conversations with capital partners, enabling us, as I say, to continue to co-create, innovate, and ultimately deliver better solutions to clients going forward with better insights to enable them to make better decisions in and around the risk decisions that they're making. The second element of the 3x3 is something that we call the Aon Client Leadership Model, which is the ability for us to be able to deliver the firm through the Aon Client Leader. It's easy said, less easy do. But following many years of client feedback, we know that empowering the Aon Client Leader to be able to deliver the firm to a client in a seamless way, in a real time way, the notion of being there for our client whenever, wherever you need it, is the setup of the platform and the promise that we make to clients in and around that. And we have seen that when we do that effectively, that we create a client experience that delivers and or exceeds the client expectations, and again helps us deliver for today and also deliver for tomorrow with those clients. And it makes it very easy for the client, or makes it as easy as possible for the client, acknowledging that with some clients there might be one or two buying groups, and for other clients there might be multiple buying groups. But ultimately, we want to make it as easy as for them as possible to be able to get access to the capabilities of our firm, but in their time frame, and also aligned with their priorities. That is something that we started a few years ago. We're now scaling across the firm. And then the final part of the 3x3 is really how we're using Aon Business Services to transform the colleague and client experience, as well as supercharge our data analytics strategy. Those are two things that we're spending a lot of time on, reimagining the client experience, reimagining the colleague experience, reimagining how technology, AI, data ingestion, et cetera, all the things related to that are contributing to those efforts. And we're making tremendous progress in and around that we feel really, really good about. But we also know that we're scratching the surface in and around opportunity. But we have, as I say, we've made some changes to really, I would say, accelerate our efforts in that regard. We talked about the notion of one data lake earlier on. Aon was not one data lake until a few years ago, and as we adopted one data lake and gave the opportunity to our data scientist teams around the world to be able to access the one data lake, to ostensibly crack the code against some paradigms that existed out there, it's enabled us to really accelerate the development and rollout of tools and capabilities for our clients. You may have heard about Analyzer suite of tools that we've been rolling out across risk capital and human capital, which has been fabulous to be able to engage with our clients around how we help them make better decisions, how we create more optionality, How.
Can we actually deep dive into this?
Yeah.
I think this is a very interesting area, the analyzers. Can you talk a bit more about what is an analyzer? What is the benefit for the client? How do they use them?
Yeah, so the analyzers that we have, I mean, we have a number of them. We're rolling out new analyzers as well as new versions of existing analyzers on a very regular basis. In our commercial risk business, we have analyzer. We have a property risk analyzer. We have a casualty liability risk analyzer. We have a cyber risk analyzer. We have a D&O risk analyzer, and those tools are used by our brokers in conjunction with our clients to ostensibly optimize the spend of clients against availability in the marketplace, against I would say the dynamics of the portfolios of the clients in terms of what they have. And so it's really being able to sort of, I would say, integrate a real-time fact-based conversation with clients that enables them to sort of understand their own risk profile in the context of the availability and pricing of those things in the marketplace. In so doing, creates a different conversation around optionality, around short, medium, longer term objectives, against risk retention versus risk transfer, against vehicles that can be used to bridge some of those things. So you can imagine that captives plays a big role in that as well. But it's really, the best way I can often think about it, it's really taking the awareness and understanding up both sides, both on the capital side as well as the client side, to ultimately create, I would say, better alignment of what the client is trying to solve for and how we're helping the client solve that with solutions that are best fit.
If I think just to bring it to life, perhaps so let's take a property risk analyzer. So at what point? So yeah, I guess one of your brokers is talking to a client that wants to get property insurance. Like, at what point does the agent look at the analyzer? Like, what type of insights and when are they shared? That perhaps bring it to life in an actual, like, what does it look like with a client?
Yeah, so it's a real-time conversation with the clients in and around what does their risk profile look like, depending on what let's take property for sake of argument. Obviously, the thing that normally comes to mind with property is natural catastrophe, right? Natural catastrophe exposures. But within natural catastrophe, right, it's not a zero-sum game, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all approach to that. So really getting very, very detailed around natural catastrophe in, let's just say, different states in the United States. Right. So whether it's a Florida versus a Texas versus a California, for sake of argument, right? But even within those states, we use a lot of the I would say, natural catastrophe analytics that we have embedded in our commercial risk and our reinsurance teams to get really, really detailed in and around, specific locations. And within specific locations, it can be the natural catastrophe hazard, or it can be the wherewithal or the sustainability of the location of itself. So, what is it made of? Is it brick, or is it what's the construction of the actual location itself? What are some of the environmental factors that might be in and around that location that could contribute or protect from natural catastrophe exposures? So it's really, what I would say is it's really getting very, very detailed and sort of, I would say, understanding what are the data and or risk dynamics that are influencing the pricing and or availability of capital of a client's risk portfolio, and coming to a sort of level setting on that, so that ultimately the conversations that we can have with clients around optionality, trade-off, which is oftentimes where clients want to go. They want to understand the trade-offs such that they can ultimately come up with a solution that optimizes for what they need, recognizing the risk profiles they have and where we are in the marketplace and issues they might have in and around the amount of capacity, the amount of limits that they're looking for.
Yeah. So it sounds like it is, one is for the client to understand the exposure at a very granular granular level. Then for the broker to be able to understand, to be able to explain what are the trade-offs or the different solutions that Aon can offer to that client. And then there's an element of, again, like, these are, when you talk about protection, are you thinking these are some recommendations to the client on how they can mitigate some of that exposure? Is that do you think about?
It's a dynamic conversation that brings all the relative, I would say, data points into the same conversation, right? So they're not separate conversations. It brings them into the same conversation, and where the client can actually understand the trade off associated with investing in here or not investing in there, and what the benefits of that are actually going to be.
Fantastic. So it sounds like you've got a number of them already available. You mentioned property liability, cyber D&O. Is the kind of is a roadmap to keep on releasing these analyzers across all lines of business? Like, what are the next steps there?
Yes, I mean the answer is yes. I mean we've the first, I would say, cadre of analyzers that we released a couple of years ago were on the commercial risk side. So as you said, property, casualty slash liability, D&O, and cyber. But in the last 12 months, we've also been releasing on the human capital side analyzers. So we've got the health risk analyzer, which is a tool that helps clients really focus on catastrophic health issues, and particularly with private medical systems and self-insured medical systems. We know that in many geographies and for many clients, you have small populations of employers that are driving very, very significant healthcare spends and healthcare claims trends. And so helping clients understand what does that profile look like. By way of example, here in North America, on average is 1% of an employee population that's driving 40% of an overall healthcare claims spend trend for an employer. If you made that 5%, you would end up with 60% of a healthcare claims spend. So that's incredibly valuable for clients to sort of understand what are the things that are driving their spend, which increasingly is an affordability issue, as well as how organizations feel about well-being and their commitment to their colleagues. So you've got those types of things. We recently also released the workforce absence analyzer, which helps to draw sort of the correlation between health and workers' comp, which intellectually is something that we've all known has been out there for a long, long time, but is actually really, really difficult to, from an analytical standpoint, is very, very difficult to assess. Given the data points of workers' comp and health don't necessarily align perfectly if you were trying to improve the relationship between the two. But, as a result of our one data lake and asking our data scientists to try and trying to figure that out, they've been successful in being able to do that, and then aligning it with the tool that we're now talking to clients about. And it's been really interesting and really fascinating to say, things like, future workers' comp, future catastrophic workers' comp claims, we can now help clients understand from a health perspective, what are the things that are going to contribute to, future workers' comp claims. And as a result of that, what can you do today to minimize the risk of that actually happening? And so, roughly based on the clients that we have spoken to and the data that we have gone through thus far, between a third to 50% of future, catastrophic workers' comp claims can be attributed to a health issue. You can do something about it. And so starting to, for clients, the essence of being able to bend the cost curve in health and workers' comp is incredibly attractive for a whole bunch of reasons. And then probably the last example I would use, not really in an analyzer context, but certainly in a data analytics context, is a lot of the work that we've done in and around helping clients try to understand the ROI on GLP-1 spend. Has a different level of awareness and potentially importance right now in different regions around the world. But certainly in North America, it is a very, very hot topic, given I would say the awareness around GLP-1s, but also the affordability in the early years of providing those types of medications to colleagues. And oftentimes, the conversation for clients is really trying to understand the ROI in and around, after how long can we start to see the benefit of these types of medications to future or current and or future medical healthcare claims trends. Again, recognizing, obesity and diabetes and the impact that that is having on population health. There is a substantive opportunity here to be able to link that to future outcomes that actually go well beyond healthcare spend, but actually go to productivity, go to engagement, go to sustainability of workforces, succession planning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some really, as I say, there's some really interesting things going on in that world, and the analyzers really gives us the ability, frankly, to be able to scale the analytics that we are developing. We're able to scale it across our client base.
Yeah, and I can totally see kind of the benefits that all those insights really can kind of bring to your clients. How are you structured internally with the, as you, I think you mentioned this earlier, right? It's not straightforward to be able to build these analyzers, not just the data was fragmented a few years ago, but also like who is working on it, what's the domain expertise, or can you talk a bit more about how you structure the teams around this?
Yeah, so I would say there's a couple of aspects to it. One is just a wonderful partnership between the business and Aon Business Services. That, as I mentioned beforehand, Aon Business Services sort of owns our technology strategy, but is also a very, very fundamental muscle in and around our data analytics strategy. So, how we think about those things is co-owned between, as I say, the business and ABS. Secondly, we organized ourselves around the one data lake. So increasingly, our data analytics teams actually sit across risk capital and human capital rather than individual silos. And so that's been incredibly powerful in us being able to bring things to market quicker, and also just the development of the tools and the capabilities themselves, right? What do they need to look like? What are the problems that we're trying to solve? How do we engage with clients and in and around the sort of the soft launches of some of these tools, and the feedback loop that we get from clients in and around? That's fantastic. We'd love to see this in version 2.0, 3.0, et cetera, et cetera. And we're running that into all of that. And so, and then the other thing I would say is just, with the investments that we've made in sort of key capabilities in our Centers for Innovation Analytics, where, a large part of our analytical firepower sits. We've made some significant investments there. And then again, I would say just, the involvement of our data scientists really helping us leverage the one data lake into sort of understanding where there are correlations or interdependencies between data, how quickly we can develop models that sit inside these tools, how we can leverage existing models that might exist in one part of the business, but actually bring them to another part of the business, so that we get to market faster, that we can scale things in a more effective way. It's a partnership across the business, but one that has a strategic priority at the top of the house. And we work extremely hard to ensure that it has the right level of alignment and support and prioritization that enables us to not just bring things to market in the way that we have, but continue to evolve them on an annual basis.
And one thing I've heard you in the past is talking about the Broker Copilot. Is
Yeah.
is it related to, is that the way you surfaced some of these insights to your teams, or is it something?
Broker Copilot, I would say, is another great example of the partnership that exists between the business and Aon Business Services. One of the things that we've understood as we've seen the power of predictive analytics is the power of the depth of data that you can have in being able to then assess today and tomorrow. And so with the Broker Copilot, that's going to really, I would say, accelerate our opportunity to understand the market environment in very, very deeply, in the context of the depth of the market, the volatility of the market, where we are in the pricing cycle, where we are in the coverage cycle, where are we in the capacity cycle. A lot of those things are interdependent. How do we think about open market versus facilitized business? How we think about product innovation through the lens of our brokers or MGAs or MGUs. It's just going to give us I would say, just a very comprehensive lens on the market dynamics, also at the global, regional, and global level, and also through the capital value chain. So think, domestic retail to MGAs to wholesale to facultative to, alternate risk capital. The ability to be able to have a lens on that in real time. And again, when you abut that to a lot of the work that we're doing on the client risk portfolio side, as I was talking about beforehand, the ability to be able to abut those two things together, we think is going to be incredibly helpful, again, for clients and markets in being able to assess critically where the biggest opportunities to continue to increase our relevance, to increase optionality, to increase optimization for our clients across the full spectrum of issues that they're dealing with today, which again, I would say increasingly we are looking at more through the lens of the horizontal, as well as sort of the more traditional sort of vertical ways of thinking about risk and existing products.
Lambros, I found this conversation extremely inspiring. It's like sometimes the skepticals of the brokers say, well, the brokers are just intermediating. And I think you've done a fantastic job today at bringing to life, first of all, how helping your client is at the core of everything you're doing, right? In every single of this question, when you were describing your priorities, your focus, it's all about how do you enable your clients to be successful, right? And I think that there's so much details and wealth of insights in how you're helping them find the right solution and do the, as you mentioned, do the right trade-off. So I think it's really inspiring to really kind of do a deep dive into how somebody like Aon is thinking about the future of the industry. So with that, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, Hannah, I thank you for the opportunity. I really, really enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, just thank you again. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're doing and how we're helping clients.